I want to welcome you today. My name is Paul Quander, and I'm the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, and I'm joined by...
Abigail Smith, the Deputy Mayor for Education.
And this is a tag team type of weapon. We're going to do this in a different type of way. We wanted to welcome you to this event because it has been a number of years that we've been working at this, and we think we have found a very good solution to some problems that we have. And that centers around collaboration and how we as a city, how we as a community, how we as organizations can come together for the betterment of our families, our children, and our communities. The One City Youth Initiative grew out of the mayor's desire to make sure that our streets, our communities, our young folk were safe during the summer. And it proved to be so successful that the mayor decided to extend the summer all year long. It has been a collaborative effort with us reaching to every quarter of the district government and beyond, to nonprofits and other organizations to make this effort successful. And we think we have a good formula. And it's so good that we want to replicate it, we want to talk about it, we want to figure out how we can make it even better. So Abby is here with me because the education component is intimately involved. Bibi Otero, who you will meet a little later from Health and Human Services, has been intimately involved, and it truly has been a collaborative approach. So I just wanted to take a moment to say welcome and to thank you for coming and participating. We think we have something that's pretty unique here, that's been successful. And our children, and the mayor likes to define children, and we'll take a line from A Christmas Carol from 1 to 92. These are our people. And we have an obligation to keep them safe, keep them engaged, and to really develop. And we have an opportunity here. Abby?
Thank you, Paul. So I would like to just actually extend that even further down, because the mayor is very clear that children doesn't start just at 1, but long before 1. So as Paul said, I'm Abigail Smith. I'm the Deputy Mayor for Education. And it is no coincidence that there are 3 deputy mayors in the room today. So the fact that the work that has happened through the One City Summer Initiative, and that is extending now beyond the summer, takes into account what is happening, certainly starting from, as Paul said, starting from the perspective of how can we keep our streets safe, but then really going beyond to how can we ensure that our young people are engaged, that they're connected to resources that they and their families need to be connected to, that they are stimulated in ways so that they're growing and learning during the summer. It has become much, much bigger than just the notion of how can we reduce summer crime. And the fact that there is so much cross-agency work and work outside of government. So government plays a critical role in this, but so do a lot of players outside of government, which we think is really, really important. One of the reasons that I'm particularly excited about today, and what we all are going to be talking about over the next couple of hours, is that one of the things that I think the One City Youth Initiative is really a key example of is how organizations that run programs, that give grants, that do the day-to-day work can align under the overarching goals that we as a city have set out to work towards. And the mayor led the effort to establish a set of goals and outcomes for young people under the umbrella of Raise DC, which you'll all hear a little more about today if you don't already know about it, which I'm sure most of you do. And the work that the Trust and One City Youth Initiative has done to really advance all of our progress towards those goals is, to me, absolutely exemplary of what we can achieve as a city if we work together. So excited to have so many of you all here today, and I'm really excited to hear from all of the different presenters that we're going to hear from over the next couple of hours. And I am mostly excited to hand the podium over to someone much more interesting than either of us, Mayor Gray.
Thank you very much to Paul and to Abby. Let me say good afternoon to everybody and thank all of you for coming and being with us to be able to further move this ball down the field. I always look forward to coming to Gallaudet because I actually grew up in this neighborhood. And boy, what a neighborhood this was back in the day. It's a little bit different now. I never forget coming up here. Obviously, Gallaudet wasn't as well developed then when I was a kid as it is now. But I never forget coming up here. And, you know, we had folks in our neighborhood, not me, of course, you know, who often got into difficult things. I never forget being on this campus, and we were doing some things that we probably shouldn't have been doing. And this person who was, I don't know what he was a caretaker, or he was the security or whatever, walked out and pulled a gun out of his back pocket and shot this gun. I will never forget that as long as I live, seeing the fire coming out of that gun. Shot it up. I mean, he made his point. Let's put it that way. We got the heck up out of here quick. But you know, this was a challenging neighborhood for young people to grow up in. And you know, what we're doing, frankly, is trying to be able to move forward with creating opportunities for young people that we know will give them an maximum opportunity to be able to be successful. I want to say what a delight it is to work with the deputy mayors. You heard from Abby, you heard from Paul, and you'll hear from Bibi also. You won't hear from Victor Hoskins today. He's the deputy mayor for planning and economic development, but obviously what he does has an important role in shaping the future for children as well. I can't think of four people in these deputy mayor roles who I would rather work with. I actually love coming to work with them. They are fun. We meet every week, you know, as a senior staff, and they work the heck out of themselves and others in order to be able to move this city forward. And I just want to say publicly, guys, how proud I am to be able to work with you all and the work that you all have done on behalf of the District of Columbia. And you do a great job. You know, there have been titles of deputy mayor in the past in the city, but I'm not sure anybody ever really figured out, you know, what the roles were. But our folks they've done the job. They know that their job is to be, I call it the horizontal management as opposed to vertical. The agencies are run vertically. But if you don't have horizontal management, you'll never have the kind of collaboration and coordination that we all talk about. Those words are in everybody's vocabulary. There is nobody that I know of who doesn't know what the word collaboration means or coordination means or working together, cooperation, all the C's. But the extent to which we see it is far less than the extent to which we say it. And that's what our deputy mayors do. You know, Abby works across the education agencies. Bibi works across the Health and Human Services agencies, and what a phenomenal job she does with some very difficult and tough responsibilities. And Paul Kwanda has the corrections cluster with MPD, with Fire and Emergency Medical Services, Corrections, the Office of Unified Communications, and other agencies. And then they work with each other. And I cite them because I think they are an example of exactly what it is that we are trying to achieve on behalf of our youth. We have some great agency department directors also. I see Brenda Donnell, who is here. And, you know, it used to be, you know what's sad? And I see my good friend Fred Taylor here also. What's sad is that oftentimes you would see an agency or hear about an agency when something bad was happening. You know, something wrong with, there was something wrong with it. It had not achieved its goals. It was doing poorly. Don't hear much about the Child and Family Services Agency anymore, do we? You know why? The reason is because the agency is doing so well for children and families, achieving the things that we set out to do a number of years ago. There was a point when we had 3,300 children in foster care in the District of Columbia. Today, and I don't know if my number, I try to keep up with the number as much as I can. The last number I have is that we had 1,280 children in foster care. Is it lower than that now, Brenda? 1,260. 1,260. And you know what that means? It means that children are doing better. It means that children are getting the kinds of services that they need, and more importantly, families are getting the kinds of services that they need. I don't see Neil Stanley. Is Neil Stanley here? Out of town. What's wrong with him? You think it's the holidays or something? You don't hear a lot about DYRS anymore, guys, because that department is doing well. Neil understands that his job is to try to do the best that we can to get children educated, get them so-called rehabilitated, in some cases habilitated, in order to be able to come back to the District of Columbia, live in our communities, and not have to be in a revolving door of going through the juvenile justice system until, sadly, some of our kids graduate to the adult criminal justice system in the city. DPR. How many of you all are aware that DPR is now one of, let's say, 4%? In October, we were notified that our Department of Parks and Recreation, it's one of 3,000, by the way. It is now one of 112 agencies nationally that has been accredited. For the first time in the history of this city, the Department of Parks and Recreation is accredited. And I want to thank Jesus Aguirre for the work that he did to make that happen, and also Dr. Shanklin, who's now our interim director of DPR. And last night I was with our Housing Authority director. We were with the resident councils last night. And I happen to think, I don't know all the housing directors in the nation, obviously, but if there's one better than Adrian Todman, they must be mighty good. You watch the respect that she commands in the group of leaders in public housing. And let me tell you something. For those of you who don't know anything about public housing, those folk will tell you exactly what it is. You don't leave a conversation wondering what they're thinking. If they think that you're bad, you will be toast, and you will be toast very quickly. But you know what? The toast for her last night were the accolades that were demonstrated for her. And I simply say all of that to say that I think we have the ingredients now, working with CYITC and the great work that Ed and his staff have done, to be able to move forward with the kind of collaboration and cooperation that we all talk about in order to be able to make this happen. Paul indicated when he was up here that, I guess it was 3 years ago, we said, look, we got all these little pieces out here. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. We set out in that first summer to say we're going to really turn the Summer Youth Employment Program into what it was intended to be. And that was a place where kids, amazingly, isn't this innovative, that kids would have a job. They would have a real job that they went to. And we had these very exotic demands that we made on them. Exotic demands like show up every day. Exotic demands like come on time. And exotic demands like get along with the people that you work with. Isn't that groundbreaking to talk about things like that? But you know what? I say it somewhat with tongue in cheek, but the reality is that the Summer Youth Employment Program for far too long was perceived as give them a check, give them some place to go, and keep them out of trouble. It is now a different experience. And again, working with CYITC and Ed, we were able to contextualize the Summer Youth Employment Program in a way that said we're going to bring in what MPD is doing. We're going to bring in what the CYITC typically does during the summer. We're going to bring in all the pieces across the District of Columbia and create a summer initiative that will hopefully contribute to the outcomes that we are looking to achieve. And that is not just keep people out of trouble, not just keep children from getting into trouble by giving them a check, which they know they didn't earn in the first place if they had no job. I mean, they're not stupid, right? And what a value system that creates. I'm going to give you a check for doing nothing. What kind of work ethic does that then create? And what we have done is working with DOES. Is anybody here from DOES today? All right, yes. Working with DOES. We now have the Summer Youth Employment Program that is the envy of the nation. I go to mayor's meetings, and I was asked to make a presentation on the Summer Youth Employment Program. And I was on a panel with about 6 mayors. And the mayor who spoke before me said, we've got a summer youth employment program. Last year, we had 30 kids in the program, and we've added 70 kids. We now have 100 children that have a summer youth employment opportunity. And then the person after that person said, well, we haven't quite reached that threshold yet, but we are up to 75. I was actually ashamed to make the presentation. Well, I wasn't that ashamed, okay? I was somewhat embarrassed, though, to make the presentation. I said, well, we have actually 14,900 children in the Summer Youth Employment Program, and every child who wants a job gets a job, and every young person who gets a job is expected to show up at the place that they are assigned to. And when they show up there, they are expected to do work. They are expected to work with their supervisors. They're expected to produce something in that 5 or 6 hours that they work every day, because we are trying to contribute to their growth and development. And frankly, when we put all those pieces together and working with the CYITC, we realized that we had not only a great coordinated, collaborative, cooperative summer youth initiative, but we had something that could be extended then to the next level. You see, Ed, no good deed goes unpunished. And since you all have done such a good job on behalf of coordinating this effort, we are going to reward you by saying, you do it for 3-4 months out of the year, now you can do it for 12. Because we are going to extend this initiative to a year-round initiative and give us a chance to be able to do the kinds of things that as agencies, individually, folks want to do, but now to be able to do it on a year-round basis. Now, our schools are hugely important in this. And the work that we've been able to do with the schools, the chancellor is not here today, but I think Kaya Hennis is probably the best superintendent. That's a generic term, right? She is the best superintendent in the nation, in my opinion. Did you all see the test results recently? You have haters in the city. They go about looking for ways to pick holes and stuff, and let me knock that down and whatnot. And, we had some of that about the CAS scores, Remember that, Abby? We went through all of that? Yeah, we went through that. But then we said, okay, well, let's wait and see what happens with the NAEP scores, the National Assessment of Education Progress. They are administered. We don't administer those. They are administered nationally. They're administered in every state in the nation. They're administered through under the aegis and the auspices of the Department of Education. And we announced our results on November 7th. And if you haven't heard those results already, let me be the first to tell you. If you've heard them 12 times already, let me tell you for the 13th time. We are really proud of 51 states. And by the way, those forward-thinking folks that considered us to be a state, I'm proud of them for putting us in with the states, because that's where we belong, ladies and gentlemen. We should be a state already. We have a larger population than Wyoming, a larger population than Vermont, and we're doing well as the other 50 at this stage. But our scores among the 51, the number one state that showed the greatest growth in our children was the District of Columbia. And we should be very proud of what's happening with our children. That is our DCPS, that's our charters combined. In fact, I guess later this month, Abby, we will be able to drill down and talk about even with more detail, who did what, when, how, and all the good stuff that comes with that. The point I'm making is this, is that we have a lot of stuff, good stuff that's going on individually at this stage. The kinds of things, I know many of the people in this room. And I know what you stand for, I know what your values are, and I know what you want to see happen with children. These are the ingredients, if you will, that we have available to us now to really get to the next level. To use a crude example, it's almost like having, the best ingredients you can possibly have for the best dish that you want to eat, but somebody has to put it together in order to make it taste like it's supposed to taste, right? Because you can have great ingredients, and they don't turn out to be a good dish at all. But you can have great ingredients that turn out to be an extraordinary recipe for success. And that is exactly what we are at the threshold of. The CYITC, I think, has come a long ways. It has moved from just being a grant maker now to being involved in youth policy, which is one of the things we wanted to see happen along the way. To be sort of outside but connected to the system of services in the District of Columbia and help us then be able to put those pieces together with our deputy mayors to achieve the vision that we want to achieve. Yes, we are now working in a way with children that, you know, we are working with children who are younger than 1. We are getting them at the earliest possible stage now. And frankly, we are getting the moms earlier because prenatal care is such an important part of what we offer to the people here in the District of Columbia. Have you noticed that our infant mortality rate has gone down? When I was at the Department of Human Services 912 years ago, the infant mortality rate was over 23 deaths per 1,000 live births. We just announced the new infant mortality rate in July, and we'll announce another one in just a few months. But our infant mortality rate is not at 23 deaths per 1,000 live births anymore. It is now down to about 7.4, which is a 60% drop in infant mortality. And that is a function of very early intervention, early care, getting people to understand, our moms especially in some of our vulnerable neighborhoods, how important it is to access the services that we have available. And we just opened, and we need to integrate this into our youth strategy also. We've just opened a new Anacostia clinic in May of 2012 that doubles the capacity to serve people in that clinic. 3 weeks ago, we opened a new in Ward 7, a new clinic in Ward 7 in Parkside. We are just finishing one in Bellevue, which is down in Ward 8, and we're getting ready to do the groundbreaking on one in Ward 5. Wards 5, 7, and 8 have the largest number of children in the District of Columbia, and maybe not so coincidentally, the largest number of vulnerable families in the city that depend so much on city services. So a lot will be said today about those words, collaboration, coordination, and cooperation. And they really are, in many respects, overworked terms. But our job is now to turn them into reality, to take what we have learned over the last 3 years especially, and turn them into the reality that our children and our families can have a different experience. One of the things that we did a number of years ago, and I don't understand why, I think it was done out of compassion, but I don't think it was helpful. I don't know how many people are aware that when the welfare rule was changed in the nation, the District of Columbia chose not to implement those rules. What it said basically was that when you have had 5 years of being on TANF, you then are no longer eligible for those benefits. The District of Columbia, and I think it was done as a compassionate response because it was perceived to be so punitive to take those benefits away from people. The District of Columbia said, all right, when the federal money runs out, we'll put our own money up, so anybody who's on after 5 years, we will pay 100 cents on the dollar for people to be able to continue. And frankly, people started cynically calling it not the TANF program, but the PANF program. You know what PANF is? Permanent Assistance to Needy Families. And frankly, that is not the kind of assistance that our families needed. Our families needed the support of being able to get to the next place. And what we have done through David Burns, leading the Department of Human Services, and what Deputy Mayor Otero has done, we have now gotten, for the first time in the history of this city, every person receiving TANF benefits has an assessment. 19,000 people have now been assessed, and they are now moving in directions that will get them jobs. And you know what that means? It means that our children will have a different experience also. So putting together, getting these moms, because they're predominantly moms, getting these moms assessed, getting them a set of skills when they can go to work, getting their very young children into early childhood education, in many cases starting before they are even 1 year old, it will change outcomes. What we have the opportunity to do here today, and I don't want to overstate the case, we have the opportunity here today to take what we have learned from the Summer Youth Initiative, to take what we have learned from the individual agencies that are working together, and put them in a package that I think will be viewed by the nation as a model for how we coordinate, collaborate, and cooperate to be able to provide services to young people. I heard somebody talking the other day about cutting in half youth crime. And I said, wow, I want to hear about that. And I looked at the strategies that included innovative things like mentorships, Nothing wrong with mentorships. I was waiting for the next one to see if they were going to institute midnight basketball. The point I'm making is this can be groundbreaking, ladies and gentlemen. This is not the same old, same old. This is absolutely a different direction in which we are heading. And you watch when you go to other places and talk to people about what is happening with this, what happened with the Summer Youth Initiative, and what will happen now with the other 9 months out of the year. People will look at you with skepticism, they will look at you with cynicism, but most of them will look at you with eyes having glazed over because they really don't fully know what you're talking about. And then you know you have done something that's important. You haven't just simply blazed the same trail that has been blazed so many times in this nation. So, you know, if I sound excited, it's because I am. My whole history has been spent working in human services. I worked with people, now we call them with intellectual disabilities for a number of years. And then when I left the Department of Human Services, I went to work with Covenant House, an organization that was trying to get young people off the streets, ages 16 to 21. And I know, Valerie, one of the things we learned very quickly, which we probably already knew, was that if we have to wait until somebody is 16 in order to be able to properly serve them, it is too late, ladies and gentlemen. The game is over. Those that we are able to save at that stage are in a very small pool of people, and even many of them backslide after they seem to make progress. It isn't that people have failed at that level. What we have failed to do is to implement the policies that we know will work, and that is the very front end of this, and putting pieces together. Every agency director in this city wants to get an A on that agency. But then what happens to the rest of it? Brenda wants to get an A, and Brenda would get an A+ in my book, but Brenda has to be concerned about what Neil Stanley is doing in DYRS. She has to be concerned about what David Burns is doing in the Department of Human Services. She has to be concerned about what Dr. Shanklin is doing in the Department of Parks and Recreation. And that's what our deputy mayors are doing, is helping to put the pieces together. That's what CYITC is doing with the Summer Youth Initiative, the One City Summer Initiative that we created. And that's what we're going to do now with the year-round initiative. When you leave here today, I want you to be excited about the opportunity you have to really move this effort to the next level. Be excited about the fact that when you go home, you don't have to just be planning for the summer initiative that starts in June and ends at the end of August. You can plan now for what goes on year-round because you will have contributed to. Put it on your resume. Put it on Facebook. Tweet it out. Do anything you want to do with it and say, I am part of something that is groundbreaking, something that will make a difference in the future in the lives of children, youth, and families in the District of Columbia, and we will all be able to stand up one day, ladies and gentlemen, and say that we really have contributed to the salvation of our city and those who are the future of our city. Thank you very much.
I am Bibi Otero, Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, and I want to begin by thanking Ed for putting me on the agenda right after the mayor, where I have absolutely no chance, but we'll try. Then I'm joined by Ed, who I know will give us more direction for today. Mr. Mayor, I am excited, and you know I talk to you about this with a great deal of passion all of the time. And as you stated, 3 years ago, there was this idea that the deputy mayors could come together and really begin to think about how to support the youth work across the city. One of the things that we, very early on in this challenge that Paul and I and then Deputy Mayor Deshawn Wright and now with Abby struggled with is how do we bring together community, all of the city agencies with a focus around young people. So the charge was, yes, look at the issue from the perspective of violence reduction, from the perspective of education, health, community development, any one of those, but at the core is young people and how do we strengthen the lives of young people and everything around them in the community. You know, the mayor pointed to Fred Taylor, and I'm going to do the same since I have the great pleasure of having here. I don't think there's anybody who taught me about that more than Fred. Years and years ago, Fred used to have this little chart that he would go around town telling everybody, this is how this could happen. This is how we could connect the dots. And Fred, I've never forgotten that I'm supposed to connect the dots. So what we did was, I had the long experience of having worked with the Trust as a grantee and as an executive director of an organization, and the work that the Trust had been doing for years around bringing together the nonprofit sector, both as a grant maker as well as a thinker around the issues of youth development and youth policy. What we had never been able to do from the community perspective is break through city government agencies and how to partner with them in a way that wasn't about money and contracts, but it was about a vision. We began, this was really Paul's idea, and we all kind of got a little scared, but he said, we're going to start meeting Tuesdays at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we're going to bring together the city government agencies, and we are going to begin to get them headed in the right direction. It took a while, but we got Paul down to 8:30 in the morning, and he didn't even give us coffee. But what that has led to, fast forward 3 years, is 27 city agencies. Just think about 27 city agencies, DPW, DYRS, DPR, across the spectrum, not just in one cluster, but across the spectrum. 27 city agencies can today tell you what their youth initiative is. Now, DPW can tell you what their youth initiative is. It's easier for DOES. It's easier for DPR, but DOH can tell you what their initiative is. Department of Behavioral Health can tell you, and so on down the pipe. Everybody in those agencies, and by the way, the people who come to those meetings are the directors of the agencies at 8:30 in the morning every other Tuesday throughout the summer, and the planning period in the spring. Now I hear that we're going to do that year-round, Paul. The reality is that for those of you working on the community side of this, the community agencies, I don't think you've ever seen that. I don't think you've ever seen that. You know that there is some programmatically, and we didn't, and by the way, this wasn't about more resources. It was about a shift of resources. But programmatically, every city government agency can tell you what their initiative is around young people and why young people are important to the work that they do and what their responsibility as a city is for young people. That's a phenomenal move. The Trust has been really instrumental in bringing the community-based setting, all of our community organizations, many represented here, many funded through the Trust, and the city agencies around one table to have these discussions and figure out, first of all, what are our objectives, where are we headed, what are the outcomes we're looking at. The mayor mentioned Raise DC, which is the sort of umbrella that all of us came around to make to decide sort of what are the outcomes we're going to reach as a city across the board for young people, from prenatal all the way to workforce. The Trust does the same by having brought together around that sort of 5 to 24 age group and the out-of-school time space. And so it's really been critical to figure out, both through the Trust and the mayor mentioned through all these other venues, to begin to align our outcome strategy around one umbrella strategy across the city. That's the move, that's the direction, that's where we're headed, that's what you're here to talk about today, to understand clearly how do we get there? How do we accomplish workforce development goals? How do we accomplish academic achievement from the space in which we are? We're not here necessarily trying to figure out what the schools are going to do. There is a school agenda. There is a very significant one. But there's a lot of time that children spend outside of school. And so what is our opportunity to be able to fit into but it doesn't mean that we're not responsible for academic achievement for children. Just because you're not the classroom teacher But every member of the DPR team in every city government, in every one of our rec centers has a responsibility to make sure that they're looking at why children should be succeeding in school and what they need to be doing. What does that mean? And if you look across any city agency, we all have a responsibility for academic achievement. We all have a responsibility for making sure that our kids are work ready. We all have a responsibility on the issues of safety and security in communities. We all have a responsibility to assuring that our children's families are strong. So when you meet all of those, you've met a healthy community. And that's really what this strategy is about. It's about making sure that we're using our resources the right way. And that means some of the things we've been paying for, we may not do because they're not meeting these outcomes. Some things we may not be doing that we need to fund in order to meet these outcomes. So it is really critical that you spend the time today thinking about that, removing yourself from your own specific agenda, your own specific space, and figuring out what is the collective agenda, what is the collective space, and how do you contribute to it. So I hope that we have a really powerful day. It's a full room, and everyone is here. The mayor has already named some of the agencies, but I'd like to ask everybody who makes up the steering committee of the youth initiative to stand, raise their hand, so that we can applaud you, because, boy, that is a lot more work than our Tuesday morning meetings. So who's here? So the job of these folks, and we will be adding folks from community organizations into that steering committee as we move to a year-round strategy. The job for those folks is to then take what you do today, take what you do through various meetings like this, synthesize it, and help us move it towards the agenda that we have collectively as a city, the charge we've been given by the mayor, and more importantly, the charge we've been given by our community. The charge we've been given by the people we all serve, and that is that we want a healthy community. We want a place where our children grow and develop and become the responsible citizens we want them to become. And we, the adults, are responsible for making that happen. We're in charge. Our job is to assure that we create that world for our kids. And so it's a large mandate, but is one that I think we are all up and ready to do. So thank you very much, and I'm going to turn over to Ed.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be as brief as I can because the most important part of the day is yet to come. But I would like to say that I have the privilege to work on behalf of children and youth in this city every day. I have the fortune of working with talented colleagues like all of you in this room, and we all have the awesome shared responsibility in making sure that our children reach successful outcomes and become healthy adults. And so that is part of what today is all about. It's fulfilling that responsibility, and how do we do it in a way that's smart, in a way that's effective, in a way that helps us get to the outcomes that we want for our kids, that they want for themselves, and that will move this city and hopefully this state very soon into where we need to be. And so what today is about is really sharing with you briefly what we've accomplished with this, with the past year of the One City Summer Initiative, to share with you what the plans are for growing the One City Youth Initiative, but really is to get your input, because we cannot get where we want to go without all of you in this room and many of your friends and colleagues who aren't in this room. And so it's an opportunity for you to share with us how you can fit into this initiative, what we're not thinking about that we should be thinking about, what resources, both human capital and otherwise, that you can bring to the table and that we can share in this collective lift that we have, which is the most important lift that we'll do in our lives. And so without further ado, I want to bring up Rebecca Renard, who is our more than capable Director of Strategic Initiatives, and Nisha Sachdev, who is our Manager of Evaluation, to walk you through the One City Summer Initiative findings from this past year. I want to certainly thank our mayor, thank the deputy mayors, Thank our board members who, Fred is here representing our board. Thank our awesome staff at the Trust and all of our awesome colleagues, again, represented by all of you in the room. Our agency partners, I see Chief Grooms in the back from MPD, who has always played a major role in supporting our efforts, but also in supporting the One City Summer Initiative. Our great partners that we had with housing this year, who you'll hear a little bit more about, and providing the sites where we coordinated the work around. And all of our community-based partners, those who we fund and those, unfortunately, we can't fund everyone, but those who are still partners nonetheless and see their effort and see themselves as a part of this work. And so I wholeheartedly believe that we can get there. It takes our personal conviction and it takes a political will to do what's necessary to break down our own silos, break down our own misconceptions, misperceptions about each other, to come together to do this work. And it's been a good ride for 3 years, and we get up and do this every day, but it doesn't seem like work, because when it's on behalf of kids, it's actually the easiest thing that I can do is to get up every day and go in the office and do that and work with all of you. And sometimes we act like kids when we do this work, so we either get to feel young or we bully each other, we do other things. But at the end of the day, we get the kind of results that we've achieved, and with the collective effort of everyone in this room, the kind of results that we'll achieve moving forward. So we need you, you need us, our kids need us collectively. So let's get it done.
Thanks so much, Ed, and good afternoon, everyone. Hope you guys have enjoyed your lunch and are feeling good. Nisha and I are going to be presenting the findings from the 2013 One City Summer Initiative report. So Deputy Mayors Otero, Quander, Smith, and Mayor Gray already spoke to some of the components of the One City Youth Initiative, or some of the goals of it. So again, it was created about 3 years ago, initially as a kind of neighborhood-focused strategy to reduce youth crime. But since then, it quickly grew and more comprehensive, and each year it grows more comprehensive in scope as we bring new partners to the table, as our own collaboration deepens, and as we begin to see some of the gaps that we have to fill in terms of how we do the work, in terms of the work that we're actually doing. So the main goals of the initiative are, again, to develop a really strong system of collaboration and coordination. Instead of working in all of these different silos that we work in, how can we really come together and collaborate and build a sustainable system that allows us to constantly be sharing and be informed by and inform others about the work we do for youth? It also is about aligning all of our agency work. So we created a set of 5 youth goals and an extensive set of outcomes that are developmentally centered for younger youth, older youth, and young adults. As Deputy Mayor Otero just mentioned, it's about effectively deploying financial and human resources. So we don't want to waste our constituents' money. We don't want to waste tax dollars. But more importantly, we want to make sure that we're using those tax dollars and we're using the resources that we have, the expertise that we have, the human resources that we have, in order to make sure that we're doing the strongest work that we can on behalf of youth and families. And then, as Nisha is going to talk a little bit about, it's about building a comprehensive data collection system. So we all talk about, we wish that we could have a way where we can share information so we can know how doing this work affects this young person, or how a young person who's involved in this program might benefit from another program. So we all wish that we had the opportunity and the ability to share data and to really to know and be informed about the work that we're doing, and we're building that system. We've been building that for the past few years. So there are a few different components of this program, and the first one is the cross-agency collaboration and planning. The second one is, and we've already kind of talked about that, but we had some folks from our steering committee raise their hands. We have a steering committee that's composed of about 27 different agencies that are really a core piece of the work. Then we have the working groups. So the working groups really go deep into the work. And we also have meetings that we do in communities that bring the community-based organizations together to hear about the work that's happening in government agencies, for government agencies to begin to work with those community-based partners more, and to make sure, again, that all of our CBOs and our agencies are working, thanks, Nisha, are working and are aware of the goals and outcomes. I'm sure some of you have seen this mamma jamma. This is the outcomes matrix that Nisha actually masterminded. So this is just one example of two of the different outcomes. So there's the workforce, there's educational achievement, healthy lifestyles, family strengthening, and safety and structure. And then within each of those large goal areas are broken down developmentally centered outcomes that are all framed around the youth development outcomes, mastery and future, safety and structure, employability, et cetera. And then we're looking for, we're going towards long-term youth outcome impact outcomes. So that's the center of our work. That's kind of the brainchild of the work, and that's why it's the core piece of all that we do. Another major piece of this summer especially was our target area strategy. And the target area strategy, Ed mentioned it briefly. We selected 5 neighborhoods. Actually, this summer we selected 9 PSAs, not just because of crime data, but also because of really critical social indicators. So things like teenage pregnancy, academic performance, availability of resources like community-based organizations, libraries, recreation centers. So I identified neighborhoods that had a high level of these risk factors and a low level of resources, and we decided to bring all of our resources together, again, going back to that first goal of collectively deploying our resources efficiently, and laid our resources heavily in these neighborhoods. We hired young adults to coordinate the work, to be the eyes and the ears on the ground, to also be able to build relationships with the youth and families in those neighborhoods, and to connect those youth to other resources that both government agencies and community organizations have to offer. So this map just gives a sample, and again, all of this is in our full report, but this gives an example of the distribution of these target neighborhoods. And that work was really deemed as very successful this summer. Purposeful youth engagement. So again, we have a bunch of adults sitting around a table and talking about what youth need, but there were no youth sitting around that table as well. So that's that's the antithesis of youth development practice. And so through the 2013 strategy, we were very intentional about including youth as part of the youth planning team. We had focus groups and surveys, so that was a core piece of our work. Again, the expanded data and evaluation strategy, which Nisha will talk about, and then just improved communication. So we created the onecityouth.dc.gov website that some of you, or hopefully all of you, have seen. But then also we improved our internal communication so that we're a little bit better about how we're sharing information with each other. And Nisha will talk about highlights.
And so an important part of the One City Summer Initiative was the data and evaluation strategy and component. And this summer, through 100% participation with the 27 partnering agencies and 97 community-based organizations, we're able to not only measure the amount of youth that we served in the target areas and throughout the city, but also start to look at the changes we made in those youth outcomes that linked all back to the goals that we developed the programming around. So for the first time this summer, we were able to get a unique count of youth. So this summer, we served almost 20,000 unique youth in 121 programs. And more importantly, there was 121 programs, but we were making sure, again, to be intentional of reaching the youth in the areas that they were at. So those happened in 602 sites. And programs were activities that the youth came to for at least 5 days throughout the summer. And 30% of these youth were served in those 9 target areas that we had talked about. Almost 7,000 youth also came to drop-in programs. So we found last summer that we weren't really accounting for those youth that came to programs maybe 1 time a week or 2 or 3 times during the summer, and they were getting those activities that were reaching the goals. So this year we had a category that you could input your youth numbers for drop-in programs. And we served almost 7,000 youth in those drop-in programs, and a lot of the work was around health and wellness activities and academic achievement. And those happened in 35 sites throughout the city. And the last piece that we looked at were those events. So the one-time activities that families and youth could come out to again, gain the resources and services around those goal areas. And so around that, we served almost 34,000 children, youth, and families in 441 events. And those events also incorporated the target area outreach events that happened in the nighttime. So we made it intentional that the events didn't only happen on the weekends or during the day, but also in those evening hours that the youth and the families actually had suggested that they wanted. And so they went out and did outreach events, and that's included in this number. And what's even more important is the changes that we saw in the youth. And so through a survey that was designed to measure exactly the goals that we are working towards, we're able to look at those youth outcomes that were being met. So this is just the highlights of some of them. In the full report that's online, you can see in each goal area the specific indicators that were met. But just to highlight some, over 60% of the older youth and young adults, after participating in the summer programs, were able to now say they can really talk about those careers that they're interested in, talk about the skills and steps they need to reach employment. Around academic achievement, over 50% of younger youth learned to read, write, and do math. But even more impressive, over 90% of older youth now feel comfortable knowing where to go when they need help in school. Around the social and emotional part of the goal areas, 65% of younger and older youth feel motivated to learn new things, really feel positive about the future, and happy with themselves. And the crime data shows the success that we had. There was a major decrease in homicides and robberies, and also juvenile arrests decreased by almost 50%. What I wanted to share here, which again, the full report is online, is that those numbers that we just gave you is when we measured when youth responded a lot to those specific questions on the survey. But if we look across a lot and a little, so a lot and little responses, almost 90% of youth got increased their outcomes in the goal areas this summer. And so this is just a snapshot of what the results look like. And again, you can go into the full report online. So it was a huge success this summer around the youth outcomes, and not only the changes that we made in the data and evaluation to measure it, but also, like I said, the youth outcomes that we changed.
And so none of the work that we do could be possible without, or none of the expansion and the comprehensiveness that we've reached in 2013 could have been possible without recommendations from the previous years. And so we were really intentional about looking at and reading. So we create this big report, and sometimes reports just go on the shelf and no one does anything with them. But we were very intentional about taking the recommendations that came out of last year's initiative and really implementing them in this year's initiative. And in a similar way, we had a strong series of recommendations that came out of this summer. And so we just pulled a couple of those, some of the major recommendations to share today. So one, we've already addressed, is make the summer initiative year-round. And that's because, A, we recognize that young people live year-round. So we have to address the young people, make sure that there's sustainable change and there's lasting change. So we're already doing that with the new One City Youth Initiative. Another step that we've already taken that came out of the recommendations was to strengthen the collaboration with the Raise DC Change Networks. So a lot of you in the room are probably involved in some, either the Disconnected Youth Change Network or Youth Employment Change Network of Raise DC, or one of the other 5 networks. And so we're beginning to do a lot more collaboration so that we can leverage those resources, because there's no point in having 2 systems or different groups that are working towards similar goals but not working collaboratively. Another one that we're already implementing is developing and implementing the citywide data mining and analysis system. And one of our partners, the Enlightened, from the Enlightened Company, is sitting here with us today. So we are creating this. We're incorporating the use of the DC1 card. So we're working really strongly with Octo. And I know Octo is in the room too. So we're really trying to use all of those data mining and data analysis resources to give us this picture of what's happening in the city and to enable us to see what we need to do better at, what we need to expand, and where there's different gaps in services. And then the last piece is just to improve the information sharing with the public. So we created this onecityouth.dc.gov website, and I said, hopefully a lot of you are familiar with it, but probably you're not that familiar with it. So we really do have to do a better job with communicating all of this really great work that we're doing with the public to make sure that the public knows about programs and events that are going on, and also that the public has a place to, or some kind of portal to also share their information and communicate with us. So those are some of the major recommendations, and again, they're things that we're already implementing through the One City Youth Initiative. So the One City Youth Initiative is translating this, all of the successful things that happen with the summer, to a year-round program so we can have uninterrupted impact. And then we're also expanding and enhancing our target area strategy. So we're actually changing the name to Communities on the Rise, or the CORE strategy, versus target area, because who wants to be known as a target area? And so Part of that is we're looking at having the communities themselves select the outcomes along with what the data suggests, but have communities themselves identify what are the most important outcomes they want to see in their communities for their youth. Really strengthening the community and youth empowerment. So we're partnering with AmeriCorps to make the young adult coordinator's position, now the youth outreach coordinator's position, an AmeriCorps position, and embedding that in those neighborhoods. Doing deeper agency and CBO outreach and collaboration. So Nisha mentioned that agencies had a really extensive evening outreach program during the summer of 2013. So we're going to expand the training for staff and how to do better outreach. Expand the training for staff and how to work better with young people through our youth development AYD practice. And then we're also going to strengthen just the infrastructure to make sure that once a core neighborhood kind of exceeds the 3-year core implementation period, that they can actually take hold of the reins themselves and they can continue this work without having it to be facilitated by people outside of the neighborhood. And on that note, we're also working with the adult leadership in the neighborhoods to ensure that they're actually part of this planning process too. And then again, the comprehensive data system that's really going to be driving this. So those are some of the big things that are on the table for the One City Youth Initiative. And as you can see, it's a lot of work, and it's not possible without everyone that's in this room. And so we really encourage you. There's on the back of your name tag. There's actually some boxes you can check off for how you'd like to connect with this work if you're not already part of the steering committee or the working groups. There's other ways that you can connect with this work because this lift cannot be done without you.